Welcome to the 10th RSI seminar in our RSI seminar series. Again, we do have a live audience as well as a remote audience, so please, everyone in here live, please save all of your questions until the end. For our remote audience, please sign in with your name, number of viewers, and location that you're viewing from, and so we can report that back to the USDOT. For our remote viewers, we do have a 30-second lag, so please put all of your questions in the chat box and we will get to them at the end. And for the students in the room, just so you know, I do have a stack of papers that are ready for you that are all graded. So please see me after the class to get your papers, and also make sure you sign in the front. And I will be handing it over to Nicole Morris to introduce our speakers. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Nicole Morris of the Human First Laboratory and a CTS research scholar. Our two speakers today are Jason Cow and Alan Young. Jason is an associate professor of the Regional Policy and Planning at the University of Minnesota's Humphrey School of Public Affairs. His research focuses on land use and transportation in the Twin City metropolitan area. He holds a PhD from UC Davis. His research interests include land use, transportation, interactions, environmental correlates of public health, transit planning, and the connection between telecommunications and travel. Dr. Cow received his bachelor's and master's degree from the prestigious Tsinghua University in Beijing, and has a master's and PhD from University of California at Davis, where he was honored with the Wu-Tan Award for Outstanding PhD Dissertation in Policy and Planning from the Council of University Transportation Centers. Prior to joining the University of Minnesota faculty in 2007, Dr. Cow served as an associate research fellow at the Upper Great Plains Transportation Institute at North Dakota State University. His graduate student, Alan Young, is pursuing a master's degree in urban and regional planning at the University of Minnesota's Humphrey School of Public Affairs. He is interested in transportation-oriented development and in working to create walkable and bike-friendly urban spaces. So our first speaker is Alan Young.
Thank you. Today we're going to be talking about complete streets. Unlike some of the previous talks we've heard, which focused on technologies for improving roadway safety, today we're going to be talking about a policy tool to address some of the same issues. First of all, I'd like to thank the Roadway Safety Institute for letting us give this presentation. So first, I'm going to give a quick introduction to complete streets, some background on it. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about, specifically what it is, who's behind it, and where it's being implemented. Next, we're going to look a little more in depth at complete streets policies in the state of Minnesota. Then Jason is going to take over and talk about design features of complete streets projects and give an overview of some research on complete streets and pedestrian and bike safety. So to start off with, some statistics, like statistics we've seen before, about pedestrian and bicycle safety. In the state of Minnesota, in just last year alone, 1,800 people, 1,828 people were injured or killed in traffic accidents. Sorry, that's 1,828 pedestrians and cyclists. And while that only accounts for 0.6% of the total people injured or killed in traffic accidents, the number of people that were severely injured, 158, account for 14% of all the people that were severely injured in traffic accidents. So that 14% is not of the 1,800, it's of the number of people severely injured. Similarly, the number of people killed, the number of pedestrians and cyclists killed in traffic accidents account for 12.4% of the total number of people killed in traffic accidents. So pedestrian and cyclist accidents in Minnesota represent a disproportionately large number of severe injuries and deaths in traffic accidents. The statistics for the US as a whole are similar. In 2015, there were approximately 135,000 people, 135,000 pedestrians and cyclists injured, which again is 0.6% of the total number of people injured in traffic accidents. And again, the number of people killed, pedestrians and cyclists killed in these accidents, around 6,000, represents 17.6% of the total number of people killed in traffic accidents. So Complete Streets is a movement or a policy program intended to address some of these problems, to make streets safer for pedestrians, cyclists, and everyone who uses the road. The name comes from the idea that most streets in the United States, at least, are incomplete in that they serve primarily the needs of automobile drivers. Streets are designed to be efficient, to have maximized throughput, to reduce congestion, but they don't necessarily serve the needs of all users. Specifically, they don't necessarily serve the needs of pedestrians, cyclists, or transit users. So Complete Streets is a policy program designed to make streets accessible and safe for users of all ages. I'm not sure if some of you may have heard of the 8 to 80 program. The thinking is that streets should be safe for users from age 8 to 80. It's a policy. It's a similar program to Complete Streets. And streets should be accessible and safe for users of all ability levels. Again, this could include children and the elderly, as well as people who have a disability and have impaired mobility. So Complete Streets is a series of design principles that promote safety, accessibility, and ultimately equity in that the streets are serving the needs of everyone. Smart Growth America and the Complete Streets Coalition outline the program as follows. A Complete Streets approach integrates people and place in the planning, design, construction, operation, and maintenance of our transportation network. This helps ensure streets are safe for people of all ages and abilities, balance the needs of different modes, and support local land uses, economies, cultures, and natural environments. Similarly, the Complete Streets policy statement for Hennepin County states that the Complete Streets policy helps the county improve safety, mobility, accessibility, and convenience for all road users, plan, design, operate, and maintain a network of roads that serve buses, bicyclists, and pedestrians, as well as cars and commercial traffic, increase opportunities for people to be physically active through walking and bicycling. And one thing to note with these objective statements is that safety is at the top of the list of what the Complete Streets program is all about, but it's not the only goal. A couple other things to note about Complete Streets. As a program, it doesn't bill itself as a revolution in street design. It's rather a sort of return to older practices of street design that allowed space for pedestrians and users of other modes. Similarly, it's not a one-size-fits-all prescription for every street. What complete means can vary by context. A complete street or a complete rural route wouldn't necessarily include the same sidewalk infrastructure or the same bike infrastructure as a residential downtown street. It does not mean all modes on all roads, in that it is not. It doesn't suggest that every road needs to serve transit, bicycles, and pedestrians, but that rather there should be an integrated network that's equally accessible to all users. And in this photograph, you can see this is just an example of what a complete street, some complete street design features look like. We see somebody crossing at a crosswalk. Where the crosswalk is, the curb extends to shorten the crossing space. The curb extension or bump out is a common feature of Complete Streets policies. And you can see that there's a yield sign as well. So I've been saying that Complete Streets is a program, a policy program, but what exactly does that mean? Mostly it means that it's a series of policies that are enacted at the state and local level. I think currently over 700 county governments and city governments across the country have enacted some form of Complete Streets policy. These state that streets should be designed taking into account the needs of not just car users, but not just drivers, but also cyclists and pedestrians. In a more practical sense, that means that there are a series of design guidelines that guide what kinds of street furniture are included in street designs, what kinds of the way intersections are laid out, and the placement of bike lanes, sidewalks, landscaping, and other features. And as I just mentioned, common features include curb extensions, like we just saw, crosswalks, median islands to make it easier and safer for people to get across the street, as well as bike lane, sidewalks, landscaping. And in most cases, this doesn't mean a sudden sweeping away of current streets and replacing them with more carefully designed streets, but rather it tends to follow a slow rollout. Every time a city government needs to do a retrofitting project or needs to upgrade its street, the policy will kick in to make it so that the needs of all users are incorporated in the redesign. So here's an example from the state of Minnesota. As you can see, this is a photograph of a median island with a crosswalk. So a formerly broad street with no median had a median added to it to make it more attractive with some planters and also to make it safer for pedestrians to get across the street. Some other pictures, we can see a sort of, on the right, we can see a photograph of a curb cut for pedestrians, as well as a curb extension, so that you can see the parking lane actually stops, and then the end of the intersection is a curb extension. And then in the pictures on the left, it's not a very clear picture, but it's a before and after of a street redesign. You can see in the median, a shelter lane or refuge lane for left-hand turns was put in, as well as bike lanes on the side. So who's behind this? It's both a grassroots movement in that it's sort of organically happening across the country, but it's also a sponsored program. And the people behind it are the Complete Streets Coalition, which was founded in 2004, founded by bicycle advocates who wanted to make the streets safer for bikes, and then expanded to be a more encompassing program. And the Complete Streets Coalition joined and became part of Smart Growth America in 2012. Smart Growth America is a DC-based nonprofit that promotes several different smart growth initiatives, of which Complete Streets is one. And they have set up chapters in different states. So Minnesota has a Complete Streets chapter. Other states do, and they provide support for how to incorporate Complete Streets policies into local statutes and legislation. And they provide a resource center for people who are interested in advocating for this. So there are nearly 1,000 policies at city, county, and state level across the United States. And most recently, in 2015, Complete Streets got support from the federal, the FAST Act, which was the most recent transportation bill. Can't quite remember what the acronym is right now. So in Minnesota, nearly 40 cities and counties have Complete Streets policies on the books. The first one was Bloomington, then followed by several others, which maybe the most notable are St. Paul, 2009, Rochester in 2010, and Duluth in 2010, and then Minneapolis only this year in May of 2016. The state policy was passed in 2010, and at the state level, the Minnesota Department of Transportation mandates that road construction projects take into account users of cyclists, pedestrians, et cetera. What this means in practice is that there's usually a series of checklists that project managers have to check off to verify that they've actually been incorporating and meeting the different needs of different users. The Minneapolis policy in particular is interesting because even though it's the most recent, maybe because it's the most recent, it's also the most far-reaching. The policy reads as follows. The Complete Streets policy will inform decision-making throughout all phases of transportation projects and initiatives. The overarching policy purpose is the establishment of a modal priority framework that prioritizes public right-of-way use in the following order: walking, biking or taking transit, and driving motor vehicles. So what we see here is kind of like sort of like an inverted food pyramid, where you have pedestrians at the top of the pyramid, or at the top of the upside-down pyramid, who are supposed to be prioritized in all road development projects. Then transportation, or then public transit and cyclists, and finally, drivers of motor vehicles. Next, we're going to talk about what actually complete streets design looks like on the ground level. And Jason's going to explain how this policy tool gets translated into reality on the street level.
Okay, I will continue, and according to Alan, and then you can see the complete street design, and it includes several features, and also this is not a one-size-fits-all approach, and then it depends on the local context. But according to the a paper published in ITE Journal and by LaPlante and colleagues, the complete street design including three components, including design, speed, traffic calming, and pedestrian crossing. Now I'm going to introduce you one by one. So here you can see a figure, and then for this figure, and then you can see this one shows the relationship between the speed, the impact speed, and also the severity of the pedestrian crashes. And then when the, you can see the bottom one, and that one, when the speed is about 20%, so you can see the black bar, and then that one shows the death, the fatal crashes. And then we can see when the speed is about 20 miles per hour, and then only less than 10% of the crashes are fatal. But once we increase the speed to 40 miles per hour, and then you can see more than 80% of the crashes are fatal. And then so in general, you can see the higher the speed, and then you can see more crashes and also more severe crashes. So in that case, when we design the road, so in that case, the road speed, so we need to choose the appropriate design speed, then that's appropriate for the actual topology and location of that road. And then the traffic calming, and traffic calming includes many dimensions. And then here I just give you a few examples. So the first one is narrow lanes. So currently our road network, the road is about 12 feet. And then the research shows if we reduce the road width from 12 feet to 11 feet and even 10 feet, if we travel at 45 miles per hour or less, and then it's still very safe. So we could narrow the lane. So in that case, we can reduce the pedestrian walking distance. And then this one shows an example of road that commonly you will see we have a road and then we have 4 lanes. So in that case, 2 lanes each direction. So in this case, we are going to convert the 4 lanes into 3 lanes. So one lane each direction, and then the middle part is called a turning lane. And also we can save some space for the bike lanes. And this one shows the curb radius. So if you look at the bottom one, so you can see it's very wide, the turning radius. So actually, it has 2 consequences. One is, because you can see that kind of the corner, and then it's kind of curved. And then for the right turning traffic, it's very smooth for the cars to move, and then at a very higher speed. But on the other hand, because of the wider radius, and then the pedestrian need to walk more distance compared to the first one. The first one is a very narrow radius, and then the bottom one is the very wide radius. So you can see the difference. And also, in current roadway design, you can see, we have this kind of the free flow right turning lanes. So in that case, the cars does not need to stop, and then they can just, as long as safe, so as long as yield, and then it can move at a pretty faster speed. So in that case, can go through this turn, and then actually that increase the probability of crashes. But if you use the right figure, so in that case, because this is a right angle turn, so that means the car needs to stop there and also watch the traffic and also make a turn slowly. So in that case, it can reduce the occurrence and also the severity of the pedestrian crashes. And this figure shows the raised median. The raised median, when you see the raised median, and also if you have the landscape, so in that case, that will appear the road appears narrower, even though still 12 feet. So in that case, they can slow down the traffic and then reduce the crashes. And this one is called bump out or curb extension. So it has two major effects. One is because you can see the curb is out, so that means the car drivers can easily identify the passengers, waiting at the sidewalk. And also because this curb extension, and then the pedestrians they just need to walk a very short distance to cross the street. So that's going to reduce the crashes. Now I'm going to talk about the pedestrian crossing. So you can see, all of the features we just talked about, it has implications for the pedestrian crossing. And also, it's very important that we can provide the cross walks and warning signs. So in that case, give the drivers warning. Okay, so possibly you will see the pedestrian coming in front of you, and then that's going to help them to be alert and reduce their speed. And sometimes if the at this kind of corner, if this right turning corner has to be like this way. So in that case, it's better, we can provide an island instead of just have a wide curb radius. So at least, this refugee island is going to help the pedestrian to wait for traffic. And then, so this is kind of commonly seen, and then the back buttons and also the full signalization and countdown. So in that case, give a face for the pedestrian to cross the street. So those are the features of the complete street design. And then how about the research? And there are a lot of research, trying to understand the connection between, broadly, we can say the building environment and then the pedestrian safety. So, I use the information from a paper published in the Journal of Planning Literature, and then by Stalkers and colleagues. They talk about the connections between the building environment and the pedestrian friendly. And then they divide the building environment into three components. The first component is regional, and then local, and then street level. And then for the regional level, they are really talking about the density. So in general, when we see the density increase, and then the number of crashes increases. The reason is, when you see the density, and then you see more activities, and then more activity, and then more crashes. And then the second one is the regional development. And in general, you will see more crashes in the urban area, also because of more activities. But in terms of severity, and then the rural area tend to be fatal. And then the next one is regarding the urban sprawl. For the urban sprawl, this is really similar to the kind of the rural setting, and then you will see more severe crashes at the sprawling region. And now we are going to move down to the local level. And then for the local level, we have two major characteristics. One of them is the pedestrian infrastructure, and then the other one is roadway design. And then for street level, we have the visibility, traffic volume, and traffic speed. So all of them will contribute to the risk of the building environment, and then also it depends on the traffic. If we see more pedestrian traffic, and then that's going to increase the number and also the severity of crashes. And then in terms of the pedestrian infrastructure, it includes two major components. The first one is about the separation from the traffic. In general, the greater separation from the traffic, and then the more safer. So for example, you see, if we have sidewalks, so in that case, separate from the general traffic, and also the marked crossing, and also the over and underpasses. So in that case, that's going to save, the pedestrian from crashes. And then the second one is, in terms of the pedestrian infrastructure, we can have the speed limit. So we can reduce the speed limit. So in that case, the vehicle travels slower, and then that's going to benefit the pedestrian. And of course, you see the traffic coming, and then those measures are going to help the pedestrian for road crossing. And in particular, they talk about the refugee islands and marked crossing with raised bedding, and stagger lanes, and speed humps, and junction redesign. And in terms of the roadway design, and then the general conclusion is the narrow the road, and then the more the safer. The narrow the road, the safer. And then if we widen the road, that's going to increase the occurrence and also the severity of the crashes. And of course, if we see the speed reduction, that's going to help the pedestrians. And in terms of street level, and then so the first dimension is about the traffic volume. If you see more traffic, and then more crashes. So just like the vehicle safety, more VMT, and then you see more crashes. That's reasonable. And also the traffic speed. So the higher the speed, and then the more crashes. And then another thing is very important is about visibility. If you are a driver, and then at night, it's very difficult for you to see the pedestrians. So that's the reason you can see, the literature says, at the twilight and also nighttime, and then you can see more crashes. And also, if the street with low lighting, that's going to create a lot of crashes. So this is something about the visibility. And then all of this research, they may or may not have connection with complete streets. So this is a safety research. They are trying to see the connections between the built environment and the crashes. So it does not have to have any connection with complete street. And then fortunately, we do find out, I just move a little bit faster. And then, when we see the complete street program, and then, based on this three literature, and then we can see, the following strategies seems to be promising in preventing pedestrian crashes. So including the road deaths and pedestrian lanes, sidewalks, crosswalks, bump outs, speed humps, and lighting. And then in terms of the safety campaign, so this one is not that effective. As I said, all of this, may not have any connection with complete street. And then fortunately, we do have one research, conducted recently, and that research trying to see, the kind of compare the before and after. So before the implementation of the complete street program, they have a count of the crashes, and after that, they do another count. So they want to see whether or not the complete street program is successful. And then the Anderson and colleagues, they collect the information from 37 projects in the nation. And then they find out 25 of them are kind of effective in reducing the crashes. So you can see, but the range of the reduction varies a lot. So at this end, the right-hand side line, so you can see the reduction rate is only around 10%, even fewer. But when you move to the left, so it's almost as much as about 90%. So you can see it's a wide variation in terms of the effectiveness of the complete street program. And also you can see, there are about 12 of them. 12 of them are, in the positive side. So that means you can see after implementing the complete streets, actually it increased the number of crashes. But their argument is, because we implement this complete streets, and then more people are using the road. So that means you see more pedestrians on the street. And then even though we see the number of crashes increase, but relatively, the crashes per person in that way, so it decreases. And also they try to convert, those saving from the reduction in the pedestrian crashes, and then they calculate the economic value. And then they find out in 1 year it was about $18 million US. And then for some projects, the first year reduction is can cover the implementation cost of the complete street program. Now I'm going to briefly talk about the future research. So for the future research, the first two are from the review by Stalker. So when we try to understand the connection between the building environment and then the pedestrian crashes, many of those studies are based on the cross-sectional data, trying to compare the different area with different design and with different number of crashes. And then we find out there's a association between the building environment and also the number of crashes. But the association does not necessarily mean causality. So that means, if we do something on the street, it may or may not reduce the number of crashes. So that's the reason, they want to, the researcher recommend, we should do the kind of the before-after study. So in that case, we can have a better understanding about the safety benefits associated with kind of design of the roadways. And then the second one is most of the research are based on the empirical data. So this is the quantitative research. And then from there, you can see the patterns, between the different design and then the number of crashes. But the scholar argue, actually, we want to combine the empirical data with kind of the field interview. So in that case, we can have a deeper understanding about why, this kind of design feature is going to reduce crashes. So that's kind of a combination between the qualitative research and quantitative research. And then the third dimension, and this one is more general. And if you do the safety research, and then there are many methods to do the safety research. One way to do is called naive method. So in that case, when we implement the complete street, and then we have the before crashes, we have the after crashes, and then we just take the difference, and then we assume this is the benefits of the crashes, the benefits of the safety reduction. But actually, there are a few things, that may matter. Maybe over time, actually, even if you don't do anything, and then the number of crashes will decrease. So you see the temporal trends in terms of number of crashes. And also some scholars argue when you implement a complete street or you implement an intervention, this place is really in need. It's really in need. So that means you may overestimate the effects of some kind of safety measures. If you just implement some safety measure on another street, you may not see the same effects because the intervention goes to the place is badly needed. Okay, so that means we require some more sophisticated methods to address this issue. And also, from the previous figure, and then you can see the effectiveness of the complete street program vary a lot. And some of them have just maybe kind of one dimension. We just add a sidewalk. Some of them just add sidewalk and also the raised median and also the curb bump out, right? So in that case, we want to understand is really, which factor, make a difference. And also, we are trying to understand how the separate effects. So in that case, we can differentiate. This is collective effects, and also we have the individual effects. And then the next thing is, this is kind of a common problem in the quantitative research. So when we do the quantitative research, we often pay too much attention to the p-values of the test. So we want to see whether or not the p-value is smaller than 5%. Smaller than 5%, we're happy, we can publish, right? But turns out the effect, the size of the effects matter more than the quantitative, more than the p-value, Actually, I talk about this today, in my class. So for example, if the sample size is big enough, a 1-year boy just punch you, and then that effect can be significant in statistics. In terms of statistics. So a 1-year boy punch you, right? So you can feel the impact. But if I punch you, then that impact can be quite different. 1 year old and then I. So you can see that's about the size matters. So we want to understand how big is the size, not just the p-value associated with that test. And then the more important thing is regarding, from the social equity perspective. So we want to see the effects of the complete street program in different neighborhoods, different economic status. First is for this kind of complete street program, this retrofit is really it's happening in the high-income neighborhoods, it's happening in the low-income neighborhoods. So we want to see where it happens. Maybe because of political power, and then we may see more happening in the affluent neighborhoods compared to the neighborhoods with low income status. So this is about the participation. And also, in the low income neighborhoods, because many of them are rely on the non-motorized transportation for their daily errands. So in that case, maybe we can see even bigger or maybe smaller, I don't know. So this is an empirical question, in terms of effects on the complete streets. So we can see the implementation, and also we can see the effectiveness. And then we don't have much information about this.
Great, thank you. So just to finish, we're going to talk a little bit about some conclusions we can draw and some possible criticisms of the Complete Streets program. First of all, it should be said that it's a very promising policy movement in that it's recognizing that that streets are not just for cars, but should also serve the needs of cyclists, pedestrians, and transit users. There are a couple criticisms one could point out, however, with Complete Streets. One of them gets to what Jason was just saying. There are a lot of questions about the actual efficacy of this approach. A lot of it is based on common sense solutions to traffic safety problems, but more data is needed to back them up. Second, often what Complete Streets policies consist of are vague statements of the need to serve all users, rather than really specific. Well, there's always a gap between the somewhat vague policy language and the actual realities of what these policies mean on the street level. So in theory, at least, it would be easy for a transit planner who was disinclined to serve the needs of cyclists to check off a box that a road is serving cyclists because there are some sharrows painted every once in a while along the street. So there are some implementation questions. These are probably not solvable because Complete Streets is by necessity a very flexible, very context-specific program. And the third critique one might point out is that the focus on accessibility and mobility might be a little too narrow. Bike lanes and crosswalks aren't enough to make a street an exciting, vibrant, economically thriving, interesting place to be. First of all, you need to have somewhere to walk to. You can have all the crosswalks and bump outs and medians in the world, and if you don't have stores or don't have something to actually attract people to a street, it's not. It won't have the same effects. So there's a focus very heavily on pedestrian safety and only to a lesser degree on issues of placemaking or even economic development. While those are separate issues, if the goal is to create streets that are safe because they're well used and populated, then these other issues, placemaking, needs to be a part of the discussion. So some of these other, in a similar fashion, other design issues such as zoning codes that mandate buildings that create the street, that front the street, are ways of creating good streetscapes that people actually want to use. And second of all, the streets need to be integrated into a coherent, larger network, so that having one complete streets project on one stretch of one street is mostly meaningless if it doesn't connect to a larger network of other complete streets, so that people can get around seamlessly wherever they're trying to go. But as we've said before, the complete streets policies do promote proven safety features. Most of the research we looked at is about those safety features, and there seems to be strong evidence that individually, at least, crosswalks, curb extensions, other landscape features do have safety effects. So a policy that promotes these safety features is most likely a good policy. Nevertheless, as Jason said, more research is needed to actually demonstrate the link between the policy itself and the ultimate safety outcomes. So with that, I think we'll open it up to some questions.
Any questions in the live audience?
So speed is an important part of making this effective. I'm wondering, is there much in the policy about what role enforcement has in getting people to comply with the speed limit, or is the focus on really making spaces that appear to afford certain speeds? I'm just curious about the enforcement side of it.
Yeah, in the literature that we've looked at, there is not really much of an emphasis at all on enforcement of speed laws. It's really about design guidelines. So there is a lot of research saying, for example, that curb extensions at an intersection send cues to drivers to slow down, and that's more effective than having a speed limit posted. So it's really approaching the issue of speed not from an implementation standpoint, but from a design guideline standpoint.
Yeah, so that's the reason actually, when they see the roadway design, when we do the traffic calming, and actually, you can see.
Oh, Jason.
Oh.
You gotta take the microphone.
No, that's okay. You can just. Okay, actually, you can see, when we do the roadway design, this is kind of the roadway, right? So this is the standard roadway. So instead of just having all the kind of the same lines all the way, actually, you can see they can just put something here. So in that case, the car, when the cars are approaching, and then see this part is narrowing, and then so that's going to reduce the speed because even though it's the same length, but just the people feel it's getting narrower, and then people tend to slow down the traffic. And also, if we can have the speed humps, and then that's going to reduce the speed. So more of the design and from the reinforcement.
There more? I have another question. I'll just monopolize the microphone. So I'm wondering, in the policy, is there some good quantifiable support for engineers to say, look, pedestrian crashes cost Minnesota $65 million a year. These bump outs are expensive, but to try to help with some of that cost-benefit analysis to see that pedestrian deaths are really expensive, and so it's worth the expense. Is there that kind of support?
There is in some of the research that Jason mentioned, specifically this article by Anderson and others in 2014 that looked at complete streets programs in 37 cities. It found that in most cases, it seemed to reduce the incidence of traffic death and injury. And in many cases, if not most cases, it also ended up saving money. I think part of that comes from quantifying how much it costs to send someone to a hospital.
Yeah, and also, in the LaPlenty, in that article, actually they have kind of a rough kind of the benefits cost analysis. For example, if we reduce the speed from 40 miles per hour to 35 miles per hour, and then that reduces your speed by 5 miles per hour, right? And then in terms of the distance you travel, and then we can calculate the time saved, and also we can times the traffic, so we can know the benefits associated with actually this is the cost, because you reduce speed, you increase the travel time, and this is the cost associated with the changing the speed. And also, because we have the when the speed reduces, and then the number of crashes reduces, and then we can convert the fatalities and then the crashes into the money value, and then we can try to compare, which one is bigger and which one is smaller, and then seems their calculation is, the speed reduction is promising.
I'm wondering how communities or streets are prioritized for this type of design. Yeah, which which streets are, Minnesota or Minneapolis looking at for doing these types of things?
Yeah, I'm not sure that there's a short answer to that question. I think the idea would be to prioritize streets that do see a lot of pedestrian and bicycle traffic. Obviously, this isn't going to apply to rural routes in the same way. But in terms of which streets get the attention first, I think that's very often done on on the basis of when streets are up for repaving or redesigning.
So that's the reason they call it as a retrofit. So whenever we resurface, and then we can do something.
Yeah, that's why it's retrofit.
Who have you found to be like your biggest opponents of implementing complete streets? Has it been like the maintenance people with the snow and the curb bump outs, or has it been like the designers, or the everyday vehicle users, or even like transit operators who don't like those reduced or the shorter radii?
Well, since we're not working in advocacy, we haven't been coming up against opponents ourselves. I certainly think that within the Twin Cities, I can think of maybe last year or the year before, there was a bit of a controversy in Edina when they wanted to put sidewalks in on some residential streets, and some residents got very angry because they didn't want to be responsible for shoveling snow off of a sidewalk that was put in front of their property. In terms of other opponents, I think there's always going to be some opposition to people from people who think that money shouldn't be spent to subsidize cycling or transit. But on the whole, it's not a terribly controversial program, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, so again, this is not something we studied. But there's one thing, I know is there's some kind of the conflicts between, with the emergency vehicles. The fire trucks and so on and so forth, they need a wider, the turning radius. And also, in the suburban area, you can see the residential neighborhood, the streets is very wide. Actually, we do not really need that wide street, but it's really because of the fire standard. So that means they need to be that wide than for the big trucks to turn.
I have a question from an online viewer. How many of these communities experience pushback for reducing the number of travel lanes?
Oh, that's a great question. And that's not one that we've actually looked at in our research, so I'm not quite sure how to answer that. But just to repeat what we were just saying, certainly that is something that is very controversial, is reducing lanes and prioritizing adding bike lanes, which sometimes does create controversy from drivers. But again, that's not something we've been looking at in this research.
Yeah, but in general, I think it's going to be much easier, with a pedestrian environment. So that means you see a lot of pedestrians on the street, and then they are users, and then they are more willing to accept some kind of change in the streets, right? So that's the reason you can see in city of Minneapolis, they put the pedestrians on the first. And in the suburban neighborhoods, and then it's going to be very difficult to have that kind of design standard.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. One more question from online. Did the number of cyclists and pedestrians increase as a result of these improvements?
According to this article, again, which is one of the few that's really studied a before and after of places that implemented complete streets policies, in some places, yes. And so that was one thing Jason was mentioning earlier. In some places, actually, the number of traffic accidents involving cyclists went up, but the rate of cyclists, accidents per the number of cyclists actually went down. So I think there was some data about cyclists in Cambridge, Massachusetts specifically, where more people were out biking, and fewer of them were getting hurt, even though in absolute terms, more of them were getting hurt.
Great, thank you. I think that's all the questions online. Oh, one more over here.
Following on to that lane question that you had from 4 to 3 conversions, was there any increase? I don't know if you guys covered it, but increase in like vehicle and vehicle collisions, since it's it's called a suicide lane.
Um,
Center.
Yeah. I'm not sure, actually. We'd have to look at the data.
Yeah, I don't think I can provide that answer either. I mean, one way, when we do this kind of conversion is, first, this is not a heavily used traffic, right? Not heavily used traffic. Otherwise, if this is a major arterial, and then if you do this kind of conversion, and then it's not going to happen, right? So that means it's not that heavily used, and then if we can narrow them, and then that's going to reduce speed, and also, when the vehicle travel at a lower speed, even though there's some crashes, but the severity of crash is decreased. And then we turn that one into the economic value, we can see the big difference. Because a few years ago, I mean, maybe my data does not reflect the current situation. I mean, one fatality is at 7 million in Minnesota. Used to be 3 million, and then increased to 7 million. And then think about, just property damage, just $1,000 or $2,000. So you can see, if we can reduce the severity of the crashes, that can also, reduce the economic cost a lot.
All right. If that's it for questions, it doesn't look like there's any more questions online or in person. So please join me in thanking our speakers.
Thank you.
And as a reminder, next week is our last seminar. And the title of the next seminar will be Factors that Influence Collision Perception and Implications for Transportation Safety. So please join us next Thursday for our last seminar. Thank you so much.